Yeah. What's up, everybody? Global Karen here. Gonna be doing a oversimplified reaction to the American Civil War Part One. Let's talk about the Civil War. This is around the 1860s. This is around slavery. Slavery was terrible. Yeah, that's all I have to say. But we're going to go to the history. Go to the history of the Civil War. We'll oversimplify. So let's get into it.
Video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link down below to get 70% off an annual subscription, plus an additional month free. Also, stun your friends, turn heads, get compliments. Buy yourself some Oversimplified merch today, along with a very honest new character pin. Link in the description down below. Okay, Mrs. Lincoln, this is it. One last push, and we're done. 9 months and 4 days ago, my father brought forth upon my mother himself, and gave to her a child, conceived in a shack in Kentucky, and dedicated to the proposition that I will drink no more from a bottle, with little poo-poos in my pantses for the next 2 to 3 years. Now, what does it babies do again? Oh,
Yeah, cry.
I am not touching that. Abraham Lincoln grew up with his relatively poor family in Kentucky, eventually moving to Indiana, and finally, Illinois. He read a lot of books, worked a lot of jobs, wrote some questionable poetry, and finally entered the law.
Wait, let me go back and see Nicolas Cage, imposter, rail, a splinter.
Jobs, wrote some questionable.
Abraham Lincoln is my name, and what my pen wrote the same. Okay, I said I wrote in both haste and speed, and left it here for fools to read. Actual poem by Abraham Lincoln. He wrote like
finally entered the law profession. Despite being self-taught, he turned out to be a pretty clever and astute lawyer.
That's because he was self-taught.
The guy claimed he witnessed a murder at night, and Lincoln was like, "How could you have seen anything in the dark? There was a bright full moon." A what? A bright full moon. Can you say that again, please? There was a bright full moon. A dim half moon? No, a bright full moon. That's funny, because according to this almanac, there was a dim half moon that night, which makes you a liar. Well, I got a bright full moon for y'all right here.
You gonna show his ass.
That's what I call a rebuttal.
Rebuttal.
Lincoln and his cheekbones weren't only interested in law, however. He also dabbled in the world of politics, serving as a legislator in both local and national assemblies. And what a time it was. Not even 100 years after the Founding Fathers wrote, "All men are created equal."
I know how to say that, but I love how the Founding Fathers said all men are equal, but most of them have slaves. That's the hilarious part. It's not hilarious, but it's just how dumb it was.
Politicians were already asking, yeah, but what does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
It means all men. Yeah, but what does that mean exactly? And not just that. States' rights versus the federal government. What are the executive powers of the president? Is cereal a soup? The Founding Fathers left some of these questions perhaps a little too open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And the biggest question of them all was slavery, an ugly mark on what should have been a revolutionary new nation based on liberty and democracy. Thomas Jefferson had written a condemnation of slavery in the Declaration of Independence.
Really?
But out of fear of losing Southern states' support, it was removed.
Wow.
Guys, do you think leaving this a little vague will create any unforeseen problems in the future? Cannonball!
So he kept it instead of he removed it instead of keeping it. Now I see why people still have slaves. That they really ain't doing anything about it. They say all men created equal, but they never cared about black people. Let's just say it like that.
And those unforeseen problems were now beginning to rear their ugly heads.
Yeah.
As the nation developed, the North and the South developed along two very different lines, and two very different cultural identities emerged. Northern cities began rapidly industrializing, while the Southern climate allowed for large plantations of labor-intensive crops.
Yeah.
As a result, one half of the country didn't rely on slaves, while the other half became economically dependent on them. In 1793, Eli Whitney's cotton gin caused the slave trade in the South to explode, while in the North, a growing abolitionist movement was taking root.
Yeah, because in the North, black people were like free, but around the South time, around the South, they did not. They still kept like slaves. Because the people in the North and some people in the South, because white people start noticing this is pretty terrible. Seeing black people be treated like nobodies.
A general mistrust began to develop between the North and the South,
Yeah.
as Northerners felt the South were hell-bent on expanding slavery, and fears spread throughout the South that the North wanted to take their slaves away. In 1819, there were 11 free states and 11 slave states.
11 slave states and 11 free states. Because Louisiana was a slave state.
A perfect
guy from Louisiana, so it makes sense.
balance. A happy medium, a harmonious relationship. Hey guys, nice to meet you. I'm Missouri, and I would like to become the 23rd state. Hey buddy, welcome to the nation. We'll be happy to accept you as a free state. Oh no, you don't? You're trying to get one over on us. Missouri's going to be a
So Missouri was made around the slavery time.
Why don't we just ask Missouri what it wants to be, and we slave state?
Really? Missouri wants to be a slave state?
Well, then
when it first started?
Allow me to introduce to you the newest, freshest state on the scene, Maine. Hey, you can't do that, and you can't have any more slave states above this line. What? The issue of slavery is solved, and it will never come up again.
That's going to be a big issue.
A few years later, it came up again.
Yeah.
You see, as America expanded westward, each new state or territory that was added threatened to upend the delicate balance between the slave and free states.
Yeah, because more states was making, because it about to make it to like 50 states. 51 if you count Alaska.
Faction managed to outnumber the other. It could gain an easy majority and force its own ideals on the opposing side, leaving a huge portion of the population feeling spiteful and oppressed. For a while, compromises kicked the can down the road and kept the volatile balance in check, as new free and slave states were roughly added in pairs. But then one loudmouth state just had to barge in and ruin everything as usual.
Oh, yeah, Texas.
The addition of Texas saw the United States enter into a war with Mexico, which they won, gaining a huge amount of land out west and creating even more problems. Hey guys, nice to meet you. I'm California, and I would like to become the 31st state. Hey buddy, welcome to the nation. We'll be happy to accept you as a southern slave state. Oh no, you don't. You're trying to get one over on us. California's going to be a free state. Okay, listen, why don't we just ask California what it wants to be, and we can free state.
Really? So California want to be a free state. California technically really is a free state. You think about it.
Well, then, allow me to introduce to you the territories of New Mexico and Utah, able to freely vote for slavery themselves. Hey, you can't do that. And we can enter Northern Territory anytime we want to recapture escaped slaves. What?
What?
The issue of slavery. Or we can enter Northern Territory anytime we want to recapture.
Anytime we want to recapture escaped slaves.
Capture escaped slaves. What?
Okay, this is around the 1850s.
The issue of slavery is solved, and it will never come up
It really
again.
didn't. It still wasn't solved.
It came up again. In 1854, a Democratic senator from Illinois wanted to build a really cool choo-choo train here and proposed that the territories of Kansas and Nebraska be created open to slavery, even though they were clearly above the Missouri Compromise line.
Yeah.
Obviously, the northern states were like, hell no. But the Southern Democrats who controlled Congress at the time were like, well, if you love liberty and democracy so much, then you should let them vote on whether slavery should be legal or not. And so it was. Huge numbers of pro- and anti-slavery settlers rushed to Kansas to sway the vote in their favor. And while they were all there, they began to beat the crap out of each other. One of those settlers was a man named John Brown, a former businessman who failed at just about everything he tried and went arguably insane. He was a...
I like how this guy with the big beard was the guy who was anti-slavery. He wants the slaves to be free. That's interesting. Okay, he looks like the guy who's just wants to keep slaves, but turns out he's the guy who wants slaves to be free. And
radical
I actually like that.
And dedicated much of his life to the Underground Railroad and freeing slaves. One night, in revenge for pro-slavery forces, he and his sons killed a number of pro-slavery settlers in the territory, helping to kickstart years of violence known as Bleeding Kansas. Kansas and Nebraska both eventually voted in favor of outlawing slavery.
Okay, so they outlawed slavery.
But from here, the tension began to grow at a rapid pace. In 1852, author Harriet Beecher Stowe penned Uncle Tom's Cabin, a best-selling novel that exposed the terrible cruelty of slavery to the world. Oh, how awful,
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Corrupt the nation must be to allow such things to happen. Your Majesty, what should we do about all the starving children working in the coal mines? Nothing. In 1854, the Republican Party was formed, and Abraham Lincoln emerged as a leading figure. Southern Democrats viewed the new Republican Party with mistrust, believing it to be radical and abolitionist. In 1856, a politician named Charles Sumner gave a speech in Congress, calling out slave-owning Democrats with fiery language. If slavery was a woman, she'd be an ugly one, and the senator from South Carolina would like to boink her. Representative Brooks, do you have a rebuttal? Oh, I have a rebuttal, all right. Yeah, here's a rebuttal for you.
I love how you decide to do it,
Surely
King.
this isn't allowed. I don't know. I'll have to consult the rule book. I can't find anything about caning a political opponent, but it says here I'm not allowed to wear a woman's underwear.
But he's assaulting somebody. It's still the same.
News of the violence on the Senate floor took the nation by storm. Southern slave owners sent Representative Brooks new canes to replace his now broken one. And on the floors of Congress, politicians carried weapons in self-defense, which is never a good sign.
Yeah, it's not a good sign if every single person from different, like, free state and slave states wants to bring weapons so they can defend themselves. That's not good. That's not a really good sign because people will die.
In 1857, the Supreme Court ruled in the Dred Scott case that all people of African descent, slave or free, could not be citizens and therefore could not sue for their own freedom under any circumstances, undoing years of progress with the strike of a gavel.
That's fucked up.
Within all this bitter debate over slavery, there were many nuances: North versus South, Republican versus Democrat, states versus the federal government. But let's strip all of that away. For 4 million individuals living in America, this was
because around that time it was like 4 million black people. I don't know how many black people is in America right now. It takes a lot.
About political intrigue or party alignment. It was about the basic human right to be free.
Black people didn't care about all this stuff. We just want to be free. Black people just want to be free and have our own rights like white people. They just want rights. They want to be free. They don't want to be slaves and just be tucked down to like a lot of people. They want to vote. They want to own businesses. They want to do a lot of things like other people can do, like white people can do. Because it's around time when white people and black people and white people at that time know white people I think anti-slaves. They want them to be free too. So because they see how bad it is and how black people were treated at the time, so they all want to be free. But yeah, the slave states that don't want that to happen because they want to own slaves, so they won't have to work for nothing and let them do all the work. It's like almost like Mexico in America, but at least they are free too. But sometimes they be getting fucked too as well.
Men.
But the thing is that the difference between Mexico and black people, they never went through what black people went through. I think a little bit, but not this badly.
And children were stolen from their homelands and brought to the Americas.
Because our ancestors were stolen from Africa to come to America to be treated as nothing, as just low class citizens. They didn't even want us to be citizens. They didn't want us to be like animals that only be commanded to.
The continent, where for generations they were considered to be property.
Yeah.
Forced to live in poverty and work from sunrise to sunset.
Yeah, because forced to be property.
Forced to live in poverty.
Yeah, because black people had to be forced to live. All black people around that time was really, really poor because they treat us like poor people until I think until we get to parts of the video, it started changing. But we still had to deal with racism and everything else. I think until 1964. It took us another 100 years to be really free from like racism and stuff. But we still, even around that time, we still had to deal with. It's still 2021. We still had to deal with racism. We still had to deal with racism because racist people still think that they are back in this time, back in 1860. They think black people are still beneath them, even though we are not. We are practically the same. Racist white person sees that a black person are like both the same. We know we have these problems nowadays, but they just can't see that.
And worked from sunrise to sunset. Plantation overseers did whatever they felt was necessary.
Like the police too. The police, some not all police officers, but some police officers still think this too. But things about some police officers because of how ghetto people are killing like a lot of police officers and stuff. I can see why they they shoot at black people because they don't know that ghetto. They will shoot them first. It's shoot and ask questions later mentality. Because some police officers think black people are threatened because look at rap music. Rap music caused the whole black shoot thing. Even though they'll get a lot of hate for it, it's just how it is. It's just because how it is. We still get shot at even though rap music wasn't existed. But at the time how rap music started, rap music did cause the whole black people are ghetto and they will shoot people and steal things and stuff mentality. But even with that, they still think that we are like property. Some racist cops and because racist cops thinks that we still in 1950s. Let's just say that.
To get the most out of their slaves. Punishments were often barbaric. Families were regularly separated,
Yeah.
and parents could often only watch as their children were auctioned off, never to be seen again. Thousands of slaves took the treacherous risk of running away, and abolitionists in the North helped many escape via the Underground Railroad as bounty hunters entered the North to chase them down.
Yeah.
Leading figures within the abolitionist movement,
Franklin
black men and
Franklin Douglass and Harriet Tubman. These are the two that historians always tell us that these two always help black people because they the ones that did the most for helping black people a lot. They don't tell about other Underground Railroad people helping other black people, but these are the two main ones that are influential of the underground railroads.
But it's important to note that for many of the anti-slavery white individuals in the North, opposition to slavery was often an economic issue.
Yeah, it is an economic issue.
As many worried large plantations would take their lands and livelihoods away. Abraham Lincoln knew that slavery was a moral evil, and he regularly spoke out against it in powerful speeches that helped him rise through the ranks of the new republic. He lamented at the hypocrisy of a great American nation meant to stand as a shining beacon of freedom.
Yeah. He wants, because this is not, people say, I think people back in the day say, like, we are free to do anything we want. But it's like, oh, black people, y'all not free to do anything. But how y'all say y'all are a free country and not treating black people like free as like regular citizens, like you people? It's just how like white people. Y'all not a free state. If y'all were a free state, y'all should have abolished slavery. I talk about at the time. Right now, we already abolished slavery.
Also enslaving 4 million men, women, and children. He most famously declared in 1858 that a house divided against
I think he died in 1864 or 63.
Cannot stand. That one day, slavery in America would end. However, even Lincoln was caught.
See, Lincoln, he ended slavery, but he passed away at the time because someone killed him. But it took us another 100 years to actually be people. It took us like now we can vote and do a lot more stuff now. That's how long it took slavery to die. To racism didn't die, but black people can do a lot more stuff now instead of getting killed like every single day. That we still do.
So that given enough time, he believed it would naturally die out. Thankfully, history would force it.
But nowadays, black people just kill other black people because they in the ghetto.
In October 1859, one abolitionist decided he'd try to single-handedly take down slavery by force. Who would be crazy enough to even attempt such a thing? It's our good friend, John Brown. He planned to seize arms from an armory in the town of Harper's Ferry, free the slaves there, and continue south, inciting a major slave uprising along the way. A noble cause, a bad plan, and terrible execution. Brown's men took the armory and some hostages, but were quickly surrounded by one Robert E. Lee and his U.S. Marines. Brown was captured, and a couple of months later, he was executed for treason.
Damn.
Northerners sympathized with Brown, but Southerners were like, you see this? They're coming for us. Soon, there'll be 1 million John Browns. 1 million John Browns? What on earth are you thinking about? A John Brown farmer?
Why he look like the dude from KFC? Colonel.
Me too. To make matters worse, new northern free states meant now the southern states really were outnumbered, and they were beginning to feel bitterly spiteful and oppressed.
Yeah, because now they outnumbered, because now all the free states are having a lot more people want to be all black people, white people want black people to be free, and black people want to abolish slavery. The slave people are going down, and it happened.
Further fear began to spread in the South when news broke that a relatively unknown figure had just secured the Republican Party nomination for president. Abraham Lincoln, mostly well-liked among anti-slavery Northerners, had made some of the most powerfully worded speeches against slavery of any politician at the time. And now there was a chance that he and his cheekbones could become president. For the South, that would be too much.
Yeah.
In the 1860 election,
because the South knows that if Abraham Lincoln become president, it's all over for them. It's no more slavery.
His name didn't even appear on the ballot in 10 southern states, but much to their horror, when the final results came in,
I'm interested who they were trying to make who's going to be president. Because I don't know, maybe Douglas.
Lincoln had won by an electoral.
Okay, they wanted John C. Breckinridge. They wanted him to be president, because I think he was he was pro-slavery.
College landslide. Lincoln himself tried to calm their fear. How many times do I have to tell you, gonna take away your slaves? Yeah, right, honest.
He is gonna take away your slaves.
We've had enough of you Northerners. We're gonna go form our own country. You can't do that. Why not? Well, if you had won the election, would it be okay for us to leave? Of course not. Well, why not? Because that's not how victim mentality works. Many states felt that when they joined the Union, they always withheld the right to leave it whenever they pleased. Many people living in 19th century America often felt more loyalty to their state than to the nation. And now, with the South feeling like it had lost its voice in the federal government, they were out of here. South Carolina was the first to go, and over a period of 6 months, one by one, 11 slave states officially.
So in June 26, 1861, Louisiana decided not to be Republican in Texas, but they all decided to come together.
Seceded from the Union, with just 4 contested border states opting to remain. The seceding states issued a number of official documents justifying their secession. South Carolina proclaimed that it was northern states' hostility to slavery that rendered the
an increasing hostility on the part of the non-slave holder states to the I can't read. I'm sorry. Of slavery has led to a disregard of their obedience, and the law of the general government has ceased to affect the object of the Constitution.
Federal government illegitimate. Mississippi declared that their position was thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, and in a speech, the Confederate Vice President stated that the new Confederate government rested upon what he called the great truth of racial inequality. Revered American generals, such as Robert E. Lee, opted to side with their states over the Union. And with all the chaos, one New York lawyer wrote that rather than a bold eagle, America's national bird should be a debilitated chicken. And hey, I kind of like that. One man, watching the crisis unfold, knew it would be his job to solve it.
Yeah, he got his top hat.
Lincoln was just about to hop on a train and become the President of the United States of America. Hey man, you're hella ugly. Grow a beard or something to hide that face.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, he really did need a beard.
Still ugly. With assassination plots already underway, Lincoln had to travel to Washington, D.C. under heavy disguise and protection.
Yeah.
All along the way, he received stacks of threatening letters. May the hand of the devil strike you down. You are destroying this country. Damn you, every breath you take. Love from Grandma. At his inauguration speech, Lincoln once again reiterated that no, I do not want to take away anyone's slaves. But for Lincoln, he did want to preserve the Union. He declared secession to be nothing but an illegitimate rebellion. In your hands and not in mine, he said, is the momentous issue of civil war. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. We are not enemies, but friends. It was clear Lincoln was ready and willing to get freaky and open up a can of Scatman John if he had to. Whether he had the support of the people, however, was in question. In the end, it was the Confederates that fired the first shot. As they seceded, the Confederate states began seizing federal U.S. property throughout the South. Off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, was one such federal property, Fort Sumter, held by a measly, undersupplied U.S. force. The Confederate militia there demanded the fort surrender, a request which was quickly denied, and any remaining hope for a peaceful solution to the secession crisis probably then died when the Confederates did this. The Battle of Fort Sumter is considered to be the beginning of the American Civil War. Many of the Confederates there also considered it to be the end of the American Civil War. They hoped Old Abe would just sigh and say, okay, you win. Unfortunately for them, Lincoln actually said, you're about to get a roundhouse to the face. Lincoln sent out the call for 75,000 volunteers, and men signed up in droves, hopeful for some adventure and good old-fashioned F-U-N. In the new Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia, Confederate President Jefferson Davis and his cheekbones had also sent out the call for 100,000 men. As ever, both sides hoped for a quick end to the war. Is it over yet? No, Jimmy, it's been 1 week. Is it over now? No! How about now? If you ask that one more time, I swear I will turn this army around and you'll all have to go back home to your wives and children. But in particular, the South knew the conflict would pose a bit of a challenge. How can we expect to win with a population of only 5 million against 22 million in the North? If you count us 4 million slaves, you'd have 9 million. Great idea. Hand these rifles out to old them. Wait a minute. You almost had me there. The problem for Lincoln was that many of his top generals were getting old and were being a bit too cautious.
Yeah.
The commanding general was a man named Winfield Scott, a veteran of the Mexican-American War, and by now, he was too fat to even mount a horse. Okay, chaps, we need to come up with a plan. Hit me. We could wait for the Confederates to come and apologize. Maybe we should all sit in a circle and discuss our feelings. Crossing the Delaware into New Jersey worked for me. Those are all terrible
George
ideas.
Washington there.
Wrong video.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the greatest president in the history of this nation. Yeah, we'll see about that, dingus. Eventually, Lincoln's generals came up with a multi-pronged strategy. First, a blockade would cut off and starve the South of supplies by sea. Secondly, taking control of the great...
George Washington is a good president, but let's be honest, he didn't really... Well, he did let black people help him fighting wars, but he really didn't abolish slavery.
River would sever the South's economic artery.
Abolish. I mean abolish.
A main Union force in the East would move south and take the Confederate capital, ending the war. Bada boom, bada bing. Skirmishes began to break out across the nation, and the Union Army in the East began to move south towards Richmond. Everything seemed to be
in the North winning too.
They came upon a large Confederate force. It's almost like they were waiting for us. How did they know? As it turned out, spies in D.C. had sent a coded message to the Confederates warning of the invasion. Did you use NordVPN? What the heck is NordVPN?
I knew that it was going to be.
Do you use the internet?
I knew it was just going to be a video.
Do you like internet safety?
It's going to be an ad placement when you said that.
Hang out sometime so I can tell you about NordVPN. NordVPN has over 5,000 secure and super fast servers in 60 countries that allow you to surf the net safely without personal data logging. Not only does it help you stay secure, but with just a click of a button, you can take a quick trip to Sweden and enjoy some Nordic crime dramas. Is there some amazing content on YouTube that's still blocked in your country? Not to fear. NordVPN is here. NordVPN gives you access to all of these amazing features, and it has a 30-day money-back guarantee. So click the link in the description below, nordvpn.com/oversimplified, and use promo code OverSimplified to get 70% off an annual subscription. That's only $3.49 a month, plus an additional month for free. Again, that's nordvpn.com/oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, secession, Fat Man, and the Union invasion into Virginia. The two sides encountered each other at Manassas, and both geared up for the first major battle of the Civil War, the First Battle of Bull Run. The Confederates rapidly put in support via rail, and the two sides were about equal in numbers. However, they were also equally inexperienced.
Not really, because not really, because the South had like the North had like two more thousand people.
Quite understand how destructive this war was going to be. The Union forces pulled a flanking maneuver to hit the Confederates on their left, and the two sides fired on each other in rows. Farm families living in the area were forced to flee the fighting, including a man named Wilmer McLean. Hurry up, Martha! There's a war out here. The more you tell me to hurry up, the slower I will go. The Union force saw initial success, pushing the Confederates back to Henry Hill. But one as of yet fairly unknown General Thomas Jackson had arrived, and he took a defensive position, standing firm like a stone wall, holding the
Now you look weird.
And finally sending them running back to Washington, D.C. with heavy casualties. The
Okay, these are the North. This is the South. 12,000 missing, 1,001 dead, 480 killed, 390 killed, 6,000 wounded, and 12 missing.
The reality of war hit both sides hard, and the North, having just lost the first major battle, had to face the serious prospect that they may not actually win this war. President Lincoln, General Jackson whipped us so hard, the Confederates are calling him Stonewall Jackson. Wait, that's why they're calling him that? Not because he looks like he ran face first into a stone wall? Apparently not. Worse yet, the North had also lost the first major battle out west, giving away control of southwest Missouri. All of this was terrible news for Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, because now we getting our asses kicked. Now the South's getting their asses kicked.
Especially
the North is losing the war against the South.
The cabinet already didn't have much respect for him. They felt he was incapable of running a war because he seemed a bit like your friendly old grandpa.
Yeah.
He famously loved a long-winded story and a good pun. I've been so busy, my wife is missing me, but her aim is starting to improve. But deep down, he could also be incredibly shrewd. Oh, Abe, you're so funny. Funny how? Funny like I'm a clown? Babe, I was just... No, funny how? Like I'm here to amuse you? During the war, Lincoln committed acts that were viewed by some as impeachable. His administration suppressed the free media from printing articles sympathetic towards the South. Some Southern sympathizers were even arrested without a trial. Lincoln's criticizers began accusing him of being a tyrant. But to quote the man himself, hey, it's war, baby. What are you going to do? By the end of 1861, with things already looking bad for the North...
So he'd been arresting people who are from the South.
Abolitionists such as Frederick Douglass couldn't believe that the Union Army weren't enlisting black men. He continued to put pressure on Lincoln to make the war about emancipation.
Yeah.
Mr. President, it's time to make the war about emancipation. I don't want to ruffle any feathers. The feathers are already ruffled. But Lincoln, hanging on to hope for a quick end to the conflict, continued to fight only for the preservation of the Union. It was decided, however, that escaped slaves from the Confederacy could be held as enemy contraband, and many of these men were put to work bolstering the Union's infrastructure and supply lines. Hoping to get things moving, Lincoln made young General George McClellan the new commanding general, and McClellan began to train up his men. He thought a lot of himself, however, and believed he was going to be the nation's great savior. And like many others, he didn't approve of the president's handling of the war. On one occasion, Lincoln went to McClellan's house to meet with him, but McClellan was late returning home. He kept the president waiting, and when he finally got there, he just straight up went to bed. Now that's what I call disrespectful.
He had no respect.
But could he walk the walk? No. Like Lincoln's other generals, McClellan was maddeningly cautious. Hey man, could you move south and attack the enemy? What? Are you crazy? What if they have a big scary army down there? They probably do. What? Oh my gosh! McClellan worried that he did not have the numbers he needed to fight effectively. What if they have like 10,000 men? Okay, no problem. We'll get you 20,000 men. Well, what if they have 30,000 men? I'll need 40. Okay, you can have 40. Well, what if they have 50? I'll need 60. Lincoln tried, but it was all in vain. McClellan would not make a move for the rest of the year.
Damn.
The North's one saving grace for now was a general out west fighting in Kentucky and Tennessee, General Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay.
Collected, methodical, and a big fan of whiskey. His chief of staff took
it. Usually ask Grant, did he become president? Because I remember that I think he became president too.
himself to keep Grant sober. One officer said that Grant habitually wore an expression as though he were determined to drive his head through a brick wall.
Let's see. Okay, he did become president after Abraham Lincoln. Okay, he did become president after Abraham Lincoln.
And was about to do it. And that determination led him to score a number of key victories when others around him were failing. At the Battle of Fort Donelson, Grant was like, "Why does Stonewall Jackson get a cool nickname and I don't? I want a cool nickname." "Sir, the Confederates say they're ready to surrender and want to know your terms." "No terms, just unconditional surrender." "Hey, unconditional surrender Grant. That's a pretty cool nickname, right, guys? Right?" Later in April
Not
1862,
really.
the Confederates launched a sudden attack on Grant's army at Shiloh, but the determined unconditional surrender Grant.
That's actually his nickname, Unconditional Surrender Grant.
Lines of the rebels and sent
That's
them running.
hilarious.
The battle resulted in the heaviest casualties.
2,000, almost like 3,000 people killed, almost 10,000 wounded. Same number captured, missing. Almost 100 people got captured. 2,000 got killed. Like 8,000 people wounded.
In U.S. history so far, and despite his victory, Grant found himself under fire. You have to get rid of Grant. Why? Didn't he win? Yes, but he just threw his men at the enemy. Isn't that the point? Also, he's a loony drunk. Well, what does he like to drink? I believe whiskey, sir. Then send him more. Lincoln watched as his cabinet did nothing but bicker, and his generals did nothing. But then, worse.
Because the only one who's doing the most is Grant. Grant's the one who's trying to fight the war. Everyone else is not doing jack shit. Just whining.
Tragedy struck. Lincoln's young son, Willie, very much loved by the president, died of typhoid fever at the age of 11.
Damn, I never knew that.
Lincoln was a sensitive.
I feel bad for his son. Then I feel bad for him because he got killed. He got assassinated.
Affected by the loss. His wife was inconsolable. But one of Lincoln's greatest traits, what made him such a great leader, was in the darkest of times, with composure and determination. He kept moving forward. He knew it was his responsibility to hold himself and his family together, and by doing so, he hoped to hold the nation together. And he had it with McClellan's inaction. Lincoln decided he was going to take control. In March 1862, Lincoln firmly ordered McClellan to once again move south towards Richmond. McClellan insisted instead they move by sea to the Virginia Peninsula and attack Richmond from the southeast. "Yes," said Lincoln. "Okay, anything." Lincoln held on to some of McClellan's men to defend D.C. from a nearby Stonewall Jackson wreaking havoc in the Shenandoah Valley, and he sent McClellan south. McClellan landed on the peninsula, and he began to move inland. He came up against a small Confederate army that had dug in at Yorktown. McClellan vastly outnumbered the force, but it's said that
he did
Confederate
outnumber
General
them.
deceived McClellan by cleverly maneuvering his smaller force and making McClellan believe he faced a huge army. No, you have way more men than them.
Yeah.
Move forward.
You got 50 to 7K people, maybe 6,000. They only have like 12,000. Stop acting like they are a big group. You can take them out.
No. McClellan settled in for a month-long siege, giving time for Johnston to
He can just take them out, but McClellan is so scared of finding these people.
masses and Magruder time to retreat. When he finally entered the city and found it deserted, he declared it a victory, calling his success brilliant. Then, after meeting some resistance at Williamsburg, McClellan moved to within just
now he's doing stuff now.
Of Richmond. His army is able to hear the church bells ringing in the enemy capital. You still outnumber them. Go give them hell.
Yeah.
No. McClellan once again held back, moving slowly and defensively. And with his army split in two, the Confederates saw an opportunity to strike back. McClellan's advance was halted, and now the Confederates pulled an ace out of their sleeve. General Lee, you're up. Do you think we should evacuate Richmond? No, Mr. President, no need. General Robert E. Lee, one of the most brilliant military commanders of the time, was now in charge.
Oh, yeah.
One of his biggest strengths was his ability to read the mind of his enemy, and he knew McClellan was cautious and weak.
Yeah.
After moving Stonewall Jackson
Because this
south
dude is super weak. Like, he ain't want to fight back.
Lee hit McClellan
You
in a
ain't on
series of
war. Do
fast-paced
something.
close combat battles that had McClellan spooked. McClellan retreated the Union Army back again and again and again, escaping the
Like, he
peninsula
had way more men, and he's acting like a dumbass.
and returning to D.C. Lee had defeated McClellan, and the campaign had failed. Well, that was a major success. A success? Tell me exactly what was successful about that. Well,
You ran
successfully
away.
retreated. You lost.
Yeah.
I didn't lose. I merely failed to win. Things just kept looking worse for the North. At least the Navy had seen some success.
Y'all need to replace Mcclellan because he ain't doing anything.
Capturing a number of key port cities.
I love how they said get rid of Grant. At least Grant is doing shit.
Steamrolled past Confederate forts to take New Orleans. And speaking of the Navy, both sides had begun using ironclads. So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
But in the East, they still weren't having any luck. After McClellan's disastrous campaign, Lincoln briefly sent out one General John Pope to attack Northern Virginia.
And they did some work.
Just checking in. How's it going? Well, the Confederates kicked my butt at Cedar Mountain. Then they raided my camp and ran off with my money and clothes. Also, I appear to have been wedgie. Lee defeated Pope at yet another battle.
They
at
leave
Bull Run,
fucking
in
them
which
up
nearby
too.
farm families once again got caught up in the fighting. Hurry up, Martha. There's another war out here. I'm waiting for my hair to dry. William McLean, sick of war, moved his family south, where he knew the war would definitely, absolutely, never touch him again. But Lincoln had yet another
Call
problem
foreshadowing.
to contend with. European powers,
He's right in the middle of the war.
The UK were looking increasingly like they may intervene diplomatically on the side of the Confederates. They were missing their precious supply of Southern cotton because of the Union blockade.
Yeah.
And they wanted to see a swift conclusion to the war. The tension between America and Great Britain had been increasing, especially after Confederate diplomats were discovered on a British ship. Now, after McClellan's failure to take Richmond, the UK declared it impossible for the North to win. Lincoln needed something to prevent Europe from getting involved, and after more
Yeah, because if the UK get involved and help the South take out the North, I think if the UK did have the South, I think America would have been still part of slavery if it had.
From abolitionists, he decided maybe the time was finally right to make the war about ending the institution he hated, slavery. If the North had a noble cause to fight for, Europe would be less likely to intervene. But Lincoln and his cabinet knew before they could declare something as radical as emancipation, they needed a victory, especially now that the Confederates were about to go on the attack.
So they want to win like this little war with Lee, then making emancipation for now that black people can be part of war.
Supplies. We now hope that
I'm surprised that they never let black people be part of war.
Washington, D.C. militarily, he would gain Europe's recognition and crush Northern morale in time for the midterm elections, forcing the North to negotiate. With confidence at an all-time high, for the first time, Robert E. Lee invaded the North. But on September 13th, the North finally had some luck. Oh boy, it's my lucky day. A cigar in a field. Hey, what's this wrapped around it? Oh my gosh! That's right. The North had discovered General Lee's battle plans wrapped around some cigars. And in them...
What? Why? Wait a minute. Why? Who found why are his battle plans in a random cigar?
Saw that Lee had split off his forces. McClellan headed out from D.C., and the two sides met in the Battle of Antietam, a crucial battle that would decide the course of the war. It saw the most vicious fighting to date, and still remains the single bloodiest day in American history.
9/11.
But for once, the North came out victorious,
Okay.
and Lee was forced to retreat.
Okay. At least McClellan did something.
He's on the run. Chase him down and finish him off.
Yeah.
No. You know what, old buddy, old pal? You're fired.
Yes.
The North had won their crucial victory. Lincoln breathed a huge sigh of relief, and with that win, he was prepared to take a huge step. On September 22nd, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued.
Okay.
In January, all slaves held in the Confederate States would be, as far as the U.S. government was concerned, officially free. Throughout the North, free black men and women rejoiced, knowing that if the North were to win, their brothers and sisters would no longer be held in bondage. The proclamation also had the intended effect on Europe.
Yeah, because it affected Europe too, because all the cotton came from the South. Because the cotton came from the South, so the UK can't get cotton from them because now black people got emancipated. So black people were free, but they still need to finish. But the North still had to finish this war, so all black people can be free.
Who were not willing to oppose a pledge to end slavery. An outraged Confederacy knew that Lincoln had given the war a new meaning.
Yeah.
It was no longer just about the preservation of the Union. Now it was about creating a new Union, washed clean of its original sin. A union without slavery. This video was made possible by Honey.
That's what they were afraid of. They were afraid that he created a new union without slavery. Now they fucked now.
Stick around to learn how you can save money when you shop online.
Part 2.
As the Union struggle to take control in the East continued, elsewhere, the war raged on. The Confederates attempted an invasion of Kentucky, hoping the state as a whole would join them, but they were pushed back. The Indian Territory saw Native American tribes ally with one side or the other in the hopes of securing rights after the war. Along the Mississippi, General Ulysses S. Grant remained one of the few Union generals scoring major victories.
He's the only one scoring victories.
General Sherman by his side, Grant led his armies down the Mississippi to the Confederate stronghold of Vicksburg. Both sides knew that if Vicksburg fell, the Confederacy would be split in two, and the Confederates prepared for an intense defense of the city. But back in the East, Lincoln still wanted somebody to march south and take Richmond. Having given General McClellan the boot,
yeah, he fired him because he ain't doing shit. As I said, he was the worst general ever. He was too cautious.
New men in charge. All right, Mr. President. Option 1 is General Hooker. Bit of a nutcase, but a good general. Option 2, his qualifications are his name is Burnside, and he's freaking dope-ass sideburns. Say no more. So General Burnside was put in charge of the Army of the Potomac and sent south.
He do got cool Burnside.
Finally had a general who could succeed. Burnside met General Lee at the city of Fredericksburg, where he intended to rapidly cross the river and take the city. But the Union War Department was too slow in delivering the pontoon bridges, and the two sides were forced to camp across from each other, close enough to speak. Hey, Yankee, ready to get your butt kicked? Yeah, right, Rebel. God is on our side. No way, God's on our side. Oh, you think so? Well, why don't we ask him? Hey, God, whose side are you on?
Neither. Like, what? That's a dumb question.
Cool. With over 100,000 men, the Union Army finally launched their massive
I think
attack
y'all
on the 11th
dumbasses.
of December. But by now, the Confederates had amassed their forces. During the battle, wave after wave of brave Union men marched headlong into a brutal Confederate onslaught.
They are getting
Even
killed.
The Confederates couldn't believe what they were seeing, and in one moment of camaraderie, a Confederate sergeant, unable to take it, reportedly came out into the field to tend to the Union wounded.
Wow, that was surprising. I think they kept seeing that they ain't gonna give up. They just kept marching, and once I was like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm done with this. I just stopped the fighting. Yeah.
Seeing this, the Union troops held their fire. Still, Burnside and his forces were soundly defeated at Fredericksburg and forced to retreat. Lincoln's popularity and Northern morale continued to plummet, especially as the winter heading into 1863 was bad. The winter camps were rife with disease. The food was less than appealing. On both sides, men began to leave. Hey, where do you think you're going? I'm deserting. What? Don't you love your country? Yes, I do. And I'm trying to get back to it as quick as I can. Lincoln, ever the kind and caring man he was, spent much of his time pardoning deserters' death sentences. Oh my, here's a 17-year-old boy sentenced to be hanged. Well, I'd better suspend his sentence, or he'll be suspended tomorrow. What? To try to keep the numbers up, both sides had introduced conscription. There was controversy in the North, however, since rich men could simply pay to have someone else fight on their behalf. Riots broke out in New York City, with enraged mobs furious at the idea of going to fight for slaves, an idea that many of them simply did not support. However,
because in the North, North was pro-slavery, so they do not want slaves to be free.
After so much pressure, the Union had finally begun allowing black men to enlist.
Okay, so this is when black people became enlisted in the war.
And these men, knowing what they were fighting for, signed up. By the end of the war, nearly 200,000 troops, 10% of the Union Army, would be black. The valor and bravery they showed throughout, silencing critics. Okay, well that last guy was useless. Let's try this Hooker fellow. General Joseph Hooker was put in charge of the Army of the Potomac, and once again, Lincoln ordered him to move south and take Richmond. Hooker met Lee at the Battle of Chancellorsville, where Hooker had over twice the men Lee did. Lee was forced to defy all military conventions.
Because now they listed black people in the war. Lee, he got more people now, and in the South, black people not gonna help them anyway. So it's like. So then the North people have more armed forces. technically the South is screwed.
But forced into two, Lee had absolutely no chance of winning, and Lee won.
What, he
It was
won?
his masterpiece.
He won? He won against like 7,000 more people on him? Goddamn.
Lee did suffer one significant loss during the battle, though, as his right-hand man, Stonewall Jackson, was riding back to the Confederate lines at night.
Got killed.
The nervous Confederate troops, unable to recognize him, opened fire.
How you shoot your own how you shoot your own people? Like, what the hell?
You boys done goofed up.
Yeah.
Jackson died 8 days later. As for Lincoln, he couldn't believe it. It was yet another loss, and Northern support continued to waver.
Yeah.
While the Union kept on struggling in the East, out West...
Even though they have, like, way more people, they still lost against Lee. Lee is just destroying people. I think if Grant fought Lee, I think they might have a chance.
Unconditional surrender Grant was making moves as always. In an attempt to take Vicksburg on the Mississippi, he made a series of risky and bold movements. He sent a cavalry raid and deigned Sherman north to confuse the enemy. Then, aided by a fleet of ironclads on the river, he raced his army south to cross the Mississippi. Aware that the terrain to the north was restrictive, instead, he strategically moved northeast, hitting Vicksburg's supply line and defending his rear from Confederate armies in Jackson. Once he reached Vicksburg, the Confederate defense became hardened, and Grant was forced to settle in for a month-long siege, during which time he got rather bored. Despite not taking the city, Lincoln loved it and encouraged Grant to hold firm. It would only be a matter of time before the Mississippi was in Union hands. Around this time, the people in the west of Virginia, who had remained loyal to the Union throughout, finally broke away to form their own state.
Okay.
They could have named it anything in the world, but
they could have named it anything.
The creative minds at the time,
High School Musical, the series, the state, that's hilarious.
Came up with the ingenious
West Virginia.
Back in Washington, Lincoln once again wanted a new general.
He hired like 3 generals and they all suck so much ass. The only one who's doing the most is Grant. Who's the next general who can do something about this?
Take command. Oh my goodness, why do all these 19th century generals look so bust? Look, we got Sleepy Eyes Joe here. That's Princess Leia with a mustache. E.T. from the Doctor. Fine, why don't we give Snapping Turtle McGee here a shot?
Snapping Turtle McGee.
So General Snapping Turtle McGee was put in charge of the...
Okay, McGee, what you can do?
Army of the Potomac. And it was a crucial time for the Union, because once again, the Confederates decided to go on the attack. So far, they had done exceedingly well militarily, but as the war kept going, the Confederate economy was crumbling. Riots broke out in the streets of Richmond as the price of bread skyrocketed. Supplies were dwindling. Jefferson Davis wanted to send men west to rescue Vicksburg, but General Lee, the longer the war lasted, the worse their chances got.
Yeah.
And he still hoped if he could just threaten D.C., the already demoralized North would surrender.
Yeah.
So in June 1863...
If he can take over Washington, it's all over.
Momentum behind him, General Lee once again entered the North, fighting his way through Maryland and into Pennsylvania.
Can he enter the North?
Set out to meet him for what would be the most significant battle of the entire war. If the Confederates won, D.C. could fall. If the Union won, it would be a turning point, as the Confederates would run out of steam, and the small town that was to get caught up in the crossfire of the largest battle in American history was Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
On June 1st, units from each army encountered one another and skirmished
Gettysburg.
through the town itself. The townspeople were forced to take refuge, except for one man, who reportedly ran outside for a strange reason. Joseph, what are you doing? I'm not gonna let them take my beans. How many times do I have to tell you they're not here for your beans? By the second day, over 100,000 men stretched for miles across the battlefield.
The Battle of Gettysburg.
Deciding to hit the enemy's flanks, and he came very close to breaking through the Union's disorganized left. But Union Colonel Joshua Chamberlain ordered a desperate bayonet charge, smashing into the Confederates and forcing them back. The Union forces held across the line. On the final day, Lee believed the Union Army had fortified its flanks, so he decided to finish them off with one massive central assault. The Confederates rushed at the Union lines during General Pickett's charge, and this time, it was the Union's turn to unleash hell. Meade had correctly guessed Lee's strategy, and the Confederates were decimated, forced to turn and flee. A devastated General Lee called out to his fleeing and wounded men, telling them it was his fault. And after holding for a counterattack that never came, he ordered a retreat back into Virginia.
Yeah, okay, this was his loss right here. That was in Gettysburg. Now they had to retreat, so they lost that fight.
The North had just managed to score a massive victory, and one they desperately needed.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't enough, in the West, after a month-long siege, Vicksburg finally fell. The North now held the Mississippi.
Okay, so Grant got hold of the Mississippi.
And better yet, it was the 4th of July.
Okay.
With control of the Mississippi, Union forces moved into Arkansas and Tennessee. Tennessee in particular saw
So he
heavy
got
fighting, with Union
Little
General
Rock,
Rosecrans
Arkansas.
masterfully pushing Braxton Bragg's Army of the Tennessee out of Tennessee. He suffered a major setback, however, at the bloody Battle of Chickamauga and ended up under a Confederate siege at Chattanooga.
Oh, that had way. South had way too many people.
Could be recovered. And often in the Civil War, during these small truces, men from both sides would meet in the middle to trade things like tobacco, coffee, and maybe even honey.
Should
So you
know.
like honey? Me too. Bees are great. And you know what rhymes with honey? Money. Did you know honey can help you save money? Let me explain. Honey is a free browser extension that automatically finds you the best coupon codes when you buy stuff online for free. For example, here I am purchasing 100 pepperoni pizzas because what the heck, I do what I want. With just the click of a button, I've saved $210. Nice. Honey works with over 30,000 websites, including eBay, Target, and Expedia. And it's already found OverSimplified subscribers over $46,000 in savings. It takes just 2 clicks to install. And better yet, it's absolutely, positively, 100% free. Get Honey now and start saving money by clicking on the link in the description below. Joinhoney.com/oversimplified. That's joinhoney.com/oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you. Now where was I?
Okay.
Oh yeah. Vicksburg, 4th of July, and the Siege of Chattanooga. Hopefully, General Grant, now in charge of all Western Union armies, showed up and karate kicked Bragg right back into Georgia. Like this.
Damn.
With Sherman and Hooker, Grant took on Confederate positions in the mountains around the city, including the famous battle above the clouds at Mission Ridge. Grant continued to be Lincoln's #1 guy.
Yeah, he's the one who's doing the most.
Victories, Lincoln hoped the war was finally turning. Back in Gettysburg, the entire town had been turned into a hospital to care for the scores of wounded men. Throughout the war, on both sides, women such as Clara Barton rose to the occasion, doing crucial work on the home front and volunteering as nurses. For those who had given their lives, a new national cemetery was to be established at Gettysburg, and Abraham Lincoln traveled out to attend the opening ceremony. At the event, the main speaker spoke for 2 hours. Then, Abraham Lincoln was called forward to give some brief, appropriate remarks. In just 2 minutes, he masterfully and poignantly iterated America's national purpose and the need to continue the fight. The Gettysburg Address would become one of the most famous speeches in American history. While they were now making progress, the North still couldn't find a decisive victory in the East. And that was bad news for Lincoln, because his presidency was now in its 4th year. In 1864, there was an election coming. The Confederates knew this too, and with little hope left of being able to threaten the North militarily.
Good, this is around the time when Grant about to become president.
Victory may be in the election, since Lincoln, Emancipation, and the war itself weren't exactly popular. People in the North were sick of war and wanted to put it behind them. Robert E. Lee hoped that if he could just hold out and continue to inflict more defeats, the people of the North would vote Lincoln out and replace him with a Southern sympathizer who may be willing to negotiate. Lincoln knew now he desperately needed a victory. Now, I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified. If Lincoln loved Grant so much, then why doesn't he put him in charge of the campaign in the East?
I was thinking about that too, but then I think it's because he's doing good around Tennessee and Mississippi that he don't want to fuck that up.
Well, guess what, loyal subscriber? You've hit the nail on the head. You're bold, Grant. I'll grant.
Okay, he actually did appoint him as
you that.
his main general.
General-in-chief, and I ain't taking you for granted. Now, I want you to go defeat Lee. Grant me my wish. Please stop. So Grant was put in charge, and he came up with a new plan.
Okay.
He wanted to press the Confederates on all fronts, with general plans to capture Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, he's the only one who knows what he's supposed to do.
And Grant joined the Army of the Potomac as they advanced through Virginia. In May 1864, that plan went into action. Sherman steadily advanced on a...
Because I'm like, what Grant not... We don't appoint Grant as the main chief of the war. Okay, then start doing it.
Under General Joseph E. Johnston. In addition, a cruel yet highly skilled cavalry general and winner of the funniest Confederate statue award, Nathan Bedford Forrest, was also nearby, doing his best
That's
to threaten
that you,
Sherman's
man.
advance.
That's
In a
hilarious.
series of battles, Sherman dominated and pushed Johnson back to the city,
Yeah.
but he was held just outside of Atlanta itself and was forced to lay siege. Meanwhile, the main show was happening to the east in Virginia. The Union's top general was finally about to face off against the Confederacies. Lincoln hoped Grant would bring something new to the Eastern Theater, and bring something new he did. As Grant began moving south, Lee still regularly outmaneuvered him and inflicted heavy casualties, hoping to demoralize the North as much as he could. But here's what set Grant apart from others. He knew Lee was running out of men, and that the North, by comparison, had plenty.
Yeah.
Grant would throw his forces at Lee, and even when Lee repelled them, Grant, rather than pulling back, would give the order to keep moving forward and flank Lee. Again and again, in under 6 weeks, 80,000 men would be killed, wounded, or missing. In D.C., Grant was criticized for being a butcher. At the Battle of the Wilderness, the Union casualties were so heavy that Grant reportedly began to weep. But still, Grant could replace his losses. Lee couldn't, and he was being pushed all the way back to Richmond. Lee knew once he got there, he'd be under siege. Then it would only be a matter of time.
Yeah.
Close to Richmond, Grant again suffered horrific casualties in a miscalculated assault at Cold Harbor. Then, trying to be a trickster, instead of moving on Richmond directly, Grant moved towards Petersburg to fight the Confederate capital and cut its supply line. But, just like Sherman, Grant was halted outside of the city, and he too was forced to settle in for a siege. 2 identical sieges would not be good enough for Lincoln's re-election. The people of the North saw the casualties Grant had been taking, and they weren't happy. To make matters worse, Lee had sent Jubal Early north to threaten D.C., with the hope of forcing Grant to withdraw troops from Richmond. Early was repelled on the outskirts of the city, with President Lincoln even attending as an observer, but the North had been given a fright. So with the war currently in a stalemate, who was to be Lincoln's opponent in the critical 1864 election? Who would the Democrats choose? Guess what, baby? I'm back. That's right. General George B. McClellan would run for president against Abraham Lincoln.
Really, this dude? You tell me he was trying to run for president against Abraham Lincoln? The dude was sorry. He couldn't even help Abraham Lincoln fight the war. He kept losing.
My fellow countrymen, if you elect me, I, the great General George McClellan, will fearlessly and valiantly win the war.
No.
Unlike this douchebag, many Democrats, however, including McClellan's running mate, wanted to end the war. So it's possible McClellan may have ended up fearlessly and valiantly making peace with the Confederates, which is exactly what they were hoping for. With the war in a stalemate, and Lincoln still not popular, it looked like McClellan would win, and the Confederacy may have a chance at surviving after all. Lincoln himself said that without some kind of major victory, it seemed exceedingly probable that this administration will not be re-elected. Well, fret not, Abe, because if it's a major victory you want, it's a major victory you'll get.
Okay.
Atlanta had been under siege by General Sherman for just over a month. After a number of battles around the city, Sherman sent the force south to sever the city's supply line, and Confederate General Hood was forced to abandon it. Atlanta, one of the Confederacy's most important cities, had fallen into Union hands. For many, it was clear that the Confederacy's defeat was now inevitable, and the war would soon be over. When the final results came in, Lincoln had won
Dang,
an
Lincoln
electoral
destroyed
landslide, with the troops in
McClellan.
voting overwhelmingly for Lincoln, which must have been touching for their commander-in-chief. Hey man, looks like
he became president for the second time.
Lost. No hard feelings? I didn't lose. I merely failed to win. In January, Lincoln involved himself heavily in ensuring the 13th Amendment made
Okay, he
it through
created the
Congress.
13th Amendment.
In a narrow and historic vote, the amendment passed. Slavery would now be constitutionally banished throughout the nation.
Okay, so Abraham Lincoln now abolished slavery from the 13th Amendment.
Men and women watching the vote from the galleries knew the work had only just begun. A couple months later, at his second inauguration, with victory right around the corner, he didn't celebrate, he didn't gloat. Instead, he emphasized the need for reunification and binding up wounds. To him, Americans, North or South, were to again be compatriots. However, listening to Lincoln speak that day was a man who had no interest in reunification, John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah, this dude right here, this dude is a terrible person. This dude killed Abraham Lincoln.
An actor living in D.C. was also a deep Southern sympathizer.
Yeah, he was. I knew this guy was a was pro-slavery. That's why he killed Abraham Lincoln.
And as the war turned against the Confederacy, depressed and full of hate, he was already plotting his revenge on the man he held responsible. With further Confederate losses, it was pretty clear at this point who would win. But still, Jefferson Davis showed no sign of giving in. The North were frustrated to see the conflict being dragged out. Why waste more lives? In Atlanta, General Sherman believed he had the key to forcing the Confederacy's hand. He had an unusually modern concept that an army could only survive with the support of the people. Strike at the people, and the army collapses. Sherman decided to do something unprecedented. He would remove his 62,000 men from their supply line and march through the heartland of the Confederacy, where they would live off the land. There, they would wreak havoc. As they marched, they tore up railroads, burned farms, and destroyed communication lines. They also liberated thousands of slaves. The damage done was estimated at $1.4 billion. The tactics were cruel.
In the modern money,
it was better than losing yet more men in battle. In December, he reached Savannah, Georgia, but he wasn't done yet. Next, he turned north to inflict his punishment on the first state to secede, South Carolina. As he moved, he came ever closer to General Lee's army.
This man Sherman is going around so he can meet Grant, so both of them two can go do a full assault against this guy.
Still holding out at Petersburg. The siege of Petersburg had lasted for 292 days.
Dang, almost a year?
60,000 of Lee's men had deserted.
Damn, 60,000?
Breakthrough had failed, but when the breakthrough finally came, it came quick. On April 2nd, a Union assault finally pushed the Confederates from their defenses. Hey man, there's no need to evacuate, right? You rescue us like last time, right? Sorry, can't hear you. Lee narrowly escaped the city, hoping he'd be able to meet up with General Johnson and continue the fight. Grant chased him down. Richmond was evacuated, and Jefferson Davis went on the run. As they left, the Confederates set fire to military buildings, but the flames burnt out of control, and as the Union troops arrived, they became firefighters. A couple of days later, Abraham Lincoln visited the war-torn city. Grant caught up to Lee at Appomattox Courthouse.
So they got Richmond.
Where he trapped his forces. It was here, on April 9th, 1865, that Lee saw no point in continuing.
So Lee just gave up.
Sir, listen, Bob. I drank a bit too much last night, and now I'm hanging like a fruit bat on a hot day. So whatever you have to say, I don't want to hear it. General Lee says he wants to surrender. Diggity dog. Grant and Lee met in the home of a nearby farm family, owned by a man who had tried his best to escape the Civil War years earlier.
This dude just wanted to get out the war, and he had to break his house and make these two negotiate.
Claim, all right.
Not negotiate, because this guy's surrendering.
Just hurry up and get this over with. Martha, not now. I'm cleaning. Do you want us to get rats? Grant and Lee, after years of war, now spoke respectfully to one another. When Lee left, his face filled with emotion, Grant's men began to cheer, but Grant ordered them to stop. He knew that now was the time for reconciliation. Just over 2 weeks later, General Johnson surrendered to Sherman, ending the war for 89,000 Confederate soldiers in the largest surrender of the war.
Yeah, because it was the largest surrender. Because Lee surrendered, Johnson had no choice but to surrender as well. So the North won this whole war.
Not every Confederate state had surrendered, but the war was as good as over.
Yeah.
Across the North, church bells rang out and celebrations erupted. In Washington, Lincoln gave a speech from the White House to a jubilant crowd, in which, among various things, he expressed his support for black voting rights. Lincoln had seen the nation through its deepest crisis. The presidency had visibly aged him. He had lost over 20 pounds.
Damn.
He said sometimes, I think I am the tiredest man on earth. I'm not sure tiredest is a word, but geez, the man's exhausted. Cut him some slack. On a carriage ride with Mary, Lincoln clearly was looking forward to being a president in a time of peace. He was apparently very cheerful, surprising his wife, and he told her that between the war and the loss of their son, they'd both been very miserable. Now, it was time to be happy. On the evening of April 14th,
I feel so bad for Lincoln's wife, because they lost their son when he was 11 years old. Then he got assassinated. So it was pretty terrible for her that she just lost both her loved ones that she cared about.
Lincoln attended a play with his wife and some friends at Ford's Theater. It was a comedy, and the president appeared.
Yeah, they was cheerful, they happy because they just won this war. Then Jonesville Booth just killed this guy. Just killed Abraham Lincoln.
In a nearby bar, John Wilkes Booth swallowed 2 glasses of brandy. He slipped quietly into the president's booth.
Why was no security around at least protect Abraham Lincoln from this guy?
And awaited for the audience's laughter to rise. The president was shot in the back of the head. Booth fled the city.
Did he flee the city?
Lincoln to a boarding house across the street. There, doctors declared there was nothing they could do. Surrounded by
it was nothing they can do. He got shot in the head, point blank range. Point blank range. It's no 360 no scope. He wasn't a sniper. He just came he went close to the guy, and with no one looking at him, just shot him in the head and ran away. No one didn't notice him. He just ran.
Heartbroken wife, son, and members of cabinet. At 7:22 the next morning, President Lincoln passed away.
Yeah.
Never before had a president been murdered.
Yeah, because Abraham Lincoln was the first president who'd been murdered by somebody, but not murdered, assassinated by somebody.
A shocked nation.
Then after that, I think it was John F. Kennedy, another guy who was trying to help black people, got killed too.
As a 12th-day funeral procession carried Lincoln back to his home in Springfield, Illinois. On April 26th, Union cavalry found John Wilkes Booth in a barn in Virginia, where he was shot.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Shoot the guy. Okay, he just shoot our good president. I'm glad that they found this guy and shot the guy too. I hope they did the same thing what he did, point blank range in the back of his head.
Not long after, Confederate President Jefferson Davis was also tracked down and arrested. In prison for 2 years, he was eventually released. The North didn't want to put him on trial for fear the jury may rule that Southern secession had in fact been legal.
Yeah.
To ensure reconciliation, other Confederate generals and politicians were allowed to re-enter life in the now restored Union. Scattered fighting continued into May, when the last Confederate forces in Texas disintegrated. The Southern states came under Northern military occupation to prevent any further rebellion, and a very difficult era of Reconstruction began.
Yeah, because it was pretty bad.
Over 3 million Americans had fought, brother against brother. The Civil War.
Over almost 1 million people died, 2/3 from diseases. 80,000 plus slaves died. Slaves killed. Black people died. 50,000 civilians died.
Remains the bloodiest conflict in U.S. history.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. Cause it was just America just fighting each other.
But the Union had been preserved.
Because over slavery.
You could say the real winners were those who were to never again be slaves.
Yeah.
Further,
the real winners was actually slavery. Slavery got abolished, and black people can be free to live what they want. But it still took another 100 years for us to now have to go through all this bullshit.
Passed by Congress gave black individuals the right to citizenship.
Okay, so they do get citizenship and the right to vote around this time. So the 14th and 15th Amendment. So the 14th, 15th, and the 13th Amendment are for black people. Okay. But it still took us another 100 years to deal with racism.
Significant progress had been made. However, entering into the 20th century, it was clear the fight for equality would continue.
Yeah, we still had to continue equality. Like, slavery is over, but equality was still there in America. It just took us another century to deal with it. Now we over the whole equality thing.
In modern America, the man who fought to preserve the nation and never gave up in the darkest of times stands as a symbol of honesty, empathy, humility, perseverance,
and a temple as the heart of the people for whom he saved the Union. The memory of Abraham Lincoln is ensured forever.
And courage. A continuous reminder of what has forged America and what it should ever strive to be.
This is the American Civil War. Yeah. This was about how the Union was changing. Black people became citizens now, but we still had to deal with equality. It was sad how Abraham Lincoln died, and I feel bad for his wife because she just lost both her kids. A lot of people died because this is when America was in his worst places, almost with prohibition and in the 1940s to 1940s to the 60s. Then yeah, prohibition. Then we still had to deal with World War II. World War II ended. Then we had to deal with black people and racism around the 1960s. Then we was chill. Then we had to deal with 9/11. Then America was chill again. It hadn't been war no more. It been chill. Nobody, because now we got nuclear weapons. No one don't want to kill each other. That's a good thing. Nuclear weapons should be destroyed. They should dissolve nuclear weapons. All the countries and never had nuclear weapons at all. Just close combat. But there was a good story. I'm gonna watch the others, but I'm gonna watch the others later. But it was a really good story of how the American Civil War happened and ended. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'm gonna post this on YouTube. The only reason why I haven't been posting on YouTube is because all the things what YouTube's doing with the dislike button ended, and it's hard to see me. It's hard to see me on YouTube because of the analytics type thing, and it's really hard to find me on YouTube. Then I'm not really growing subscribers and a lot everything too, so I stick with Twitch, but I still gonna do Twitch a lot. But sometimes I need to try to go back on YouTube and try to make videos for a lot of people. But here's the thing: I'm happy that people are watching my videos on one of my top big videos. That's on the Pixar, no, DreamWorks ranking video. I'm glad that y'all gave me 1.5k views. I thank all y'all for that. Yeah, I think I had to. I don't know what else to say. Thank y'all for. I said thank y'all for watching this video, and that's all I have to say. I'm gonna end the stream, and I will see you guys later. And goodbye.